Hello, my name's Claire Lowrie, and throughout the series so far, I've been sharing tips and tricks in order to keep your houseplants happy and healthy. And today, I'm going to be answering the questions that you've asked me directly using the knowledge that I've learned throughout the years in order to help your houseplants thrive. One of the most common questions that you've asked me is, why is my plant becoming stretched and leggy as opposed to full and bushy? And this plant here is a really good example, because if you have a look at the bottom, you can see not only has the growth become much more spaced out on the vine, the leaves have actually become much smaller as well compared to the growth at the top here, which you can see is much more condensed, much bigger and much healthier looking. And this can happen for a couple of reasons, but the most common reason is lack of light. And this plant, before I moved to my house here, was actually growing in really quite low lighting conditions. And this is actually just the plant's way of adapting in order to survive. Now that I've moved it to this space here, which has obviously got beautiful natural light, I do expect this will kind of start to correct itself as time goes on. But if you are happy with the lighting conditions of your plant and you don't think it's that, then the next thing I would absolutely do is check the roots of the plant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take the hanger off this one. And then very carefully just take a look at the roots. And obviously different types of plants are going to have different types of root system. This one is a little bit more spindly and not quite as beefy, but what you want to make sure is that you're looking for full, pale, healthy looking roots. If they are looking a bit brown or sludgy, then you might be dealing with root rot. And you can look up how to treat this online, or you can take my advice from earlier in the series. Another question that a lot of you have asked is what to do if your plant stops growing and goes into a period of dormancy. And for this, I'm going to show you one of my alocasia plants, because these are ones that are quite well known for doing this and just stopping growing. And the first thing that's really important to remember is that a lot of the plants we grow as house plants are actually tropical plants. And there's a lot of times in, for example, like a UK home environment, that it would not be supporting their natural conditions, and therefore periods of dormancy can be completely normal. Trying to force your plants to grow when they're taking a step back is actually often not the best thing. So unless you're willing to kind of introduce things like grow lights and stuff like that, I would say cut back on the fertilizer, let your plants have a rest, and a lot of the time when spring and summer kicks in, their growth is going to start coming back as well. But as I say, if you do want to try and keep your plants growing all year round, that is kind of the beauty of growing plants as house plants, because you are completely in control of their conditions. By doing things like upping the light, upping the humidity, upping the temperature, you can keep most of these plants growing happily and healthy throughout the year. Another question that a lot of you have asked is what to do if your plant starts dropping leaves. And this is a really, really common question, and a lot of the time something you actually don't need to worry about. It's important to understand what kind of issue you're dealing with. And this plant here, this is my Musa florida. And if you look at this bottom leaf here, this is actually its oldest leaf, and this one is starting to yellow and getting ready to die back. But a lot of the time in this case, when a plant is sizing up, that's completely normal. It's basically just letting go of the older growth that it doesn't need so that the plant can pass the nutrients from that leaf back into the main body of the plant, conserve its energy and turn that into new growth. Because if you look at the size of this leaf here, compared to its most recent leaf, you'll see that the plant is actually doing that in order to get bigger, and it's not a bad thing at all. The thing you do have to be a little bit cautious about, and this is where you do need to maybe do a little bit more investigating, is if this is happening a lot. Like if I started to lose a couple of leaves a week, then I'd start to think, okay, something needs to be done here. Or if you're not just losing the lower leaves, the older leaves, if the top ones here start to go, then again, that is something that you will need to investigate, because that's often something that is more sinister underlying. And typically, I always find starting with checking the roots to be the best thing. Often, a lot of the issues do start in the soil. Assuming the roots look healthy, I would just really reevaluate where you're growing your plant. Do a quick look up online, figure out the natural growing conditions of your plant, and from that, a lot of the time you can judge whether or not the lighting it's receiving is correct, humidity, temperature, all of these sorts of things. And if you can just try and replicate a little bit of its natural environment in your own home, that will often help to keep the plant really, really happy. I really hope that this helped to answer some of your questions. I think it's important to remember as well that things are just going to go wrong from time to time. You are going to make mistakes, and that's okay. It's all part of your gardening journey.